linking to their protected areas. It was a very specific piece of legislation that did that. Right now that the Nagoya Protocol is there, and there's a whole set of other measures that a country now needs to take to implement the Nagoya Protocol, they're going to have to go broader. But what's interesting, I think, is that they made that linkage from the get-go, which I find quite interesting, because in a lot of countries you'll have protected area legislation and ABS legislation, and there'll be no link between the two. And in that case, at least, they wanted to look specifically at what happens when the resource comes from protected areas. In bio, yes, of course. I mean, we're more than aware of the rich experience that has happened in Costa Rica, and I didn't mean to say before that there are no experiences out there. This is an example that was one of the oldest examples, and it's one of the examples also that shows how that there's a direct contribution also to conserved areas and to protected areas in the country. So it's a really, really interesting example of how that can be done. And I mean, we've been in touch with Jorge Cabrera for quite a while and working with him, and so it's point well taken. I think that if anyone wants to know a little bit more about that, I think it's worth contacting you. And what else was there? I think you mentioned also the benefit sharing mechanisms in terms of agreeing agreements between communities and... Yeah, exactly. Okay, so setting up this whole architecture of the Protected Area Management Authority, the communities, and how the benefits will be shared and who gets what percentage, etc., etc. And that will be interesting to look at. We're not there yet. I mean, we haven't reached that level of detail yet. In this case, in the case I was talking about, there are, I mean, that's what I was mentioning before. I think there's a lot of good, or at least rich, examples of these kind of benefit sharing mechanisms at the level of protected areas that usually deal with tourism revenues, with revenues from sales from products from the park, etc., etc., where these architectures have been put in place. Some are more equitable than others, etc. But I think that that's really something where we can learn from conservation practitioners and from institutions and communities that have been involved in these kind of things in the past, and they just need to be, I think, adapted to the specific ABS context. Tomatine, are there going to be any efforts to reap benefits from this and to make that flow back into the park? Unfortunately, in that case, I think for the use that is being put to now, the ship has actually sailed, because this is all an accession and the use of the resource that way predates the convention, and where it would potentially still be possible to then reap the benefits is if there was a new discovery, if there was a new use of that plant, of that resource, of that component for a different application. Then in theory the company, under the Nagoya Protocol, the company would have to go back to the countries of origin and renegotiate, because benefit sharing is triggered depending on what the use is. That's how the Nagoya Protocol puts it. And so in that case there would be a potential to renegotiate things. But in terms of the Tomatine, it's been, the ship has sailed. So the interpreters are telling me that we're over time and they need a break before the next session. So I am going to have to cut this short, but can you give me 2 minutes just for the last person answering the questions? I'm getting a nod. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, very quickly. I'm sure we're all tired, and the interpreters are probably more tired. I just want to go back, Barbara, to something that you mentioned, and I also mentioned in the protected area context, and I think that some of these challenges related to ABS can begin to be overcome when we improve the governance conditions, both in terms of having protected area systems that recognize other forms of governance, whether they're community managed areas, private managed areas, different, and in terms of improving the governance of the state-managed areas, so having co-management structures, having participatory management. When the communities are more involved in the management of the protected areas, they can more effectively follow up what the managers are negotiating, what other actors might be coming in, and contribute to the monitoring, contribute to controlling the use of the resources. And I think, of course, not all these issues and problems will be resolved, but it can help to overcome many of these issues.
Okay, thank you, Jordi. And unfortunately, that's all, folks. We're at the end of our session. I'm sure you all want to run up to the next one. So I'd like to thank you all for coming and for kicking up the discussion in such a vibrant way, actually. And if there's any information that you would still want, we have information here about the ABS initiative, and here there's a few leaflets on the wealth of materials that Natural Justice has produced and other partners have produced around community protocols, including the website. So come pick them up if you're interested, and there's also the Bahama flyer. Oh, please. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.